Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lawyer Interviews. I'm your host, Cynthia, and joining us today is Molly Parmer. Molly is a criminal defense attorney, law professor, and board member with the Georgia Innocence Project. Molly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
And I can also see that you previously made an appearance on Lawyer Interviews where you talked about your social media presence and some of the impacts of technology on the criminal law practice, along with your involvement in the Innocence Project and your experience as a professor. So first of all, how are you managing all of your roles, being a criminal defense attorney, a law professor, a board member with the Georgia Innocence Project on top of your social media presence?
Well, that social media presence sure takes up a lot of time. No, it really doesn't. I feel like I have a great work-life balance. I think my schedule is ideal. I don't think I work as much as people maybe perceive me as working. But I do stay busy. I think that with the right structure and with the right priorities, anyone can balance their competing interests. So my practice is mostly in federal court. So that means that my appearances are fairly streamlined and efficient. We don't have calendar calls, right? If I'm supposed to be in court at 2 p.m., I will be heard on the matter at 2 p.m. So that saves a lot of time, the way that federal court functions. So I'm very grateful for that. And then, I'm on the board of the Georgia Innocence Project. That's one of 3 boards that I serve on. It's just important to me. I mean, board service and giving back and philanthropy is important. So I just prioritize it. And then in terms of being an adjunct professor, I just teach one class, one semester a year. And yes, I mean, it's a lot of work when I'm in the middle of it, but it's a labor of love. And so I think that if you enjoy what you're doing, which I do, you never feel like you're spread too thin.
And that's inspiring. So starting with your executive involvement with the Georgia Innocence Project, we know that the Innocence Project is a nonprofit organization working to prevent and correct wrongful convictions. In our legal profession, we also understand that prevention is the ultimate form of justice. My question is, what is the Innocence Project doing to prevent future injustices?
Yeah, Cynthia, that's a great question. So obviously, we work towards exonerating individuals in Georgia who have been wrongfully convicted, and we use DNA evidence to do that. But you're right. I mean, another part of our mission is education and advancement of policies that we believe will prevent the underlying causes of wrongful convictions. So you'll see us every year at our state capitol lobbying, trying to get bills passed. Right now, we're trying to get a bill passed that would give compensation to those who have been wrongfully convicted and exonerated. We don't have that in Georgia. So once you're released, and you don't get any sort of payout from the government like other states offer. But we also try to just educate the masses. We like to raise awareness. I think the more people that realize that we have an estimated 4 to 6% of people in our prisons who are actually innocent, the more people that know that, the more people that will, I think, band together and work towards basically limiting the underlying causes of wrongful convictions. And then I think on the back end, the other thing that we do is once someone is exonerated, it's not like our work is done on the back end either. We're also trying to give exonerees their lives back. And so it's not like this happens in a vacuum. Our work is not just the exoneration, it's preventing exonerations and then assisting those after exonerations as well.
And that's very important because it's one thing to apologize, but it's something else to prevent. So that's
exactly
very important.
Exactly.
And going into your legal work, we learned that you joined Tiger King's team of attorneys. Now, for those who don't know who Tiger King is, Tiger King, known professionally as Joe Exotic, is an American media personality and businessman who was convicted of plotting to kill animal welfare activist Carol Baskin and sentenced to 21 years in prison. So, at what point did you join his team of attorneys, and what is going on with this case now?
Well, I joined his team. I think I filed my entry of appearance in September of last year. And so he was convicted, I believe, in 2019. So after his conviction, I didn't try his case. I didn't write his first appeal. The first appeal had an issue that required a resentencing hearing. It didn't make much of a difference in terms of the sentencing guidelines as it related to the total time of imprisonment. But I joined to basically go to federal court in Oklahoma and handled the resentencing. And then at the resentencing, I thought that there was a constitutional error that was committed by the judge. I still believe that there was. So I appealed that to the 10th Circuit. I argued that. The 10th Circuit disagreed, but now it's sent back. His case is sent back to the district court in Oklahoma, where we have a pending motion for new trial, which will attack not his sentence, but his conviction, the whole case. So we'll see.
And as you have firsthand experience regarding the legal complexity of the Tiger King case, could you give us a breakdown of the post-conviction work?
Yes. I really think that Joe was unfairly railroaded. I mean, I think if you look at the facts of his case and how he was sentenced, he's serving just this massively long sentence for conduct that I don't think is commensurate with the punishment at all, even if you assume he did what they say he did, which I also don't think he did. And so it's a reminder, a lot of federal cases, it's a federal case. It's a reminder of the power of the feds. And I really believe that our newly discovered evidence, which is the basis of our pending motion for new trial, is powerful. And I believe that it should warrant a new trial. But at this point, he's serving a really long sentence, and you have to attack from all angles, right? And so the post-conviction space is always interesting because you're coming in after other lawyers. You're usually collaborating with other lawyers, which always is an interesting dynamic. But you're also limited. I mean, it's like the Georgia Innocence Project. When you come in the post-conviction context, you can't undo what somebody else did. And you can't even understand it necessarily. You weren't there. It wasn't your case at that time. So I don't presume. But you don't want to close any doors, which is why if there is an issue to appeal, to litigate to the 10th Circuit, then you do it. If there's a way to also attack the conviction, then you do it. And if we lose the motion for new trial, then we'll appeal that. And then after that, there's this proceeding. You can pursue habeas corpus proceedings under a 2255 in federal court that basically attacks the constitutionality of the underlying sentence and addresses whether you had effective counsel. So I think the complexity of post-conviction work is that you attack from all angles, you don't give up, and you try and undo whatever has been done.
That's very interesting. And we know that you run your own show as the founder of your boutique firm in Atlanta, Parmer Law, focused on defending high-stakes criminal cases. First, why did you decide to start your own practice? And second, do you believe that the large law firm business model is dying?
Well, I started my own practice because at the end of the day, I'm very independent. I think that's it. I loved all of the jobs that I worked before that. I was an assistant federal defender, and then I was an assistant public defender right out of law school, and they were wonderful. I don't think I was running away from a bad environment. I loved all of those opportunities. But for me, what's great about the law is that it is one of these professions where you can say, I can be my own boss. And I've had the greatest bosses in my tenure in the law, but there is something, if you are ferociously independent, which I am, that the level of fulfillment that you have in kind of creating and designing and working as you see fit, the amount of creativity I get to bring into my job every day, the amount of choices I make based on what I feel or think or want is just huge. And so I knew that that would be something that I would enjoy. And it's not for everyone. I mean, you have to be neurotic and organized and structured and a self-starter. But I also knew that I was all those things. So I think for me, it's just this lifestyle of being my own boss that was incredibly attractive. And so I went after it. And no, I don't think the large firm model is dying. I don't. I think that the law takes all kinds. I do criminal defense mostly in federal courts. I also do some kind of high stakes cases in state courts. But I think that what I do is just my little niche. And you look around and, I work as co-counsel or local counsel for huge firms across the US on some big like white collar cases. And the scope of their knowledge and their experience and their resources is great, and it's just a different model. But I don't think that there's one model of practicing law that is superior to another, right? Even within the law, we have so many different ways you can practice. Are you transactional or are you a litigator? If you're a litigator, are you doing personal injury or family law, or are you doing criminal law? And so you just have to find what works for you. And I know many lawyers who the big law firm works for them, and they're great attorneys. So no, I don't think any model of practicing law is dying. We all are evolving, but the law's been around forever, and I think certain pillars in the legal community are here to stay.
That's true. And it depends on who you are as a person, what model works for you, what structure works for you. One of the benefits, and hearing you speak about, your reasons of why you wanted to open your own practice, is also perhaps the ability to maybe control the cases that you take on.
Yeah, that was a big change, right? So as a public defender, whoever gets arrested is going to be your client, right? You don't really have much control. And as a state PD, while I worked in the county system, I had a huge caseload. As a federal defender, I had a lovely, low number, very manageable caseload. But certainly transitioning into private practice gave me choice, right? Choice is really interesting, I think. And I think if you're working for somebody else, even if you're in a private firm, there is less choice. And I do find choice to be a beautiful thing. So yes, I am in a position now where if I want to say no, then I just say no.
And that's the goal. That's the goal.
Nice. It is very nice.
And so you previously made statements that you were raised in poverty by two counterculture activists. And as you know, and may be experienced, many first generation lawyers might not have the opportunities and the connections to kickstart their legal careers, effectively facing more hurdles. Now, looking at what you have accomplished so far, particularly as the founder of your own law firm, what is your advice for first-generation lawyers who are perhaps struggling to break through the legal profession?
I think first and foremost, before I get to some advice, I am glad to acknowledge that it is very hard to be a first-generation lawyer. It's still hard for me, and I've been an attorney for a decade. And I don't think we talk about this enough. It is an industry filled with, I'm not going to say nepotism. I could. It's an industry filled with generational and complex kind of behind closed doors, handshakes, and opportunities for those who are in the inner circle. That's very apparent, I think, the moment you go to law school. And it gets easier as you become your own attorney and you start acquiring your own accomplishments. But it's like, how do I get an opportunity if I can't even get my foot in the door? Because my dad isn't a lawyer and doesn't know anybody. And, it's really frustrating as a student. So a couple of things, I can say it retrospectively, now I see myself and I'm like, wow, I've accomplished this and I did it my own way. But when I was in law school and even the first few years out, when you realize how differently situated you are, if there are no lawyers in your family, it is incredibly discouraging. And so retrospectively, I would say, first and foremost, be yourself, so you don't have any connections. So what? You still have such value in the profession. If you love the law, if you're talented as a lawyer, guess what? You don't need connections, and you have to have confidence in that and not always feel sorry for yourself. You have to just go after what you want unabashedly and without conforming to someone else's set of expectations. The other thing, it's funny. I think some people that have familial connections are the types that say to me, I hate networking. I don't want to go to that event. Well, I don't have the opportunity to decide whether I enjoy it or not. This is something that I absolutely have to do and have had to do from the moment I was in law school. So you can build your own network of people that are mentors on a level that a grandfather or father or mother or aunt or uncle could be. You can build them. You can meet them. You have to assert yourself. You have to make honest and meaningful connections with people that you meet that inspire you. Some of my best interns are the ones that just track me down and beg me for an opportunity and force their way into my life. And I'm like, you know what? That level of enthusiasm and going after it, that's great. This is going to be a good person to advocate for my clients, right? So I can't underemphasize the importance of networking and just putting yourself in front of the people that you want to be in front of. And also getting over feeling sorry for yourself and realizing that it's good to be different and we have value and we deserve a place at the table too. So from my family, my unique background, like I don't have any lawyers in the family, but there's certainly some criminals. And so I think I understand things like crime perhaps better than somebody who comes from some privileged suburban background does.
I couldn't agree more about the network because we always underestimate how much people are really willing to listen to you, to help you out, to basically be a reference for you. And I love that, the not having the victim mentality.
Exactly. And I will add a little caveat that, I do get spread in a lot of different directions. I do get pulled in a lot of different directions. And so sometimes, we may not have all of the availability to help every single person who reaches out to us, right? So don't let that discourage you either. Lawyers are busy any given day. I have a lot of people who are trying to have a little bit of my time, but balance being persistent with being understanding that we are fairly busy in this profession, and just realize that if you have somebody like if you have an internship or you have a mentorship that's valuable, maintain it in a way that is respectful of that attorney's time and still reminds them what your interests are and ways that they can help you. So you have to be real savvy about kind of those relationships, protecting them, nurturing them, and growing them.
That's true. And you're not going to connect with everyone at the end of the day.
Right.
What's important is to be genuine. If you're just
Yes.
reaching out to people left and right and you don't have a genuine interest, you're telling one person you're interested in criminal law, another person in corporate law, then you're not being genuine to the people you're talking to.
That is very true. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, and we can tell, like we're attorneys, we're fairly intellectual, and we can tell. So yes, be genuine, nurture those relationships, and be respectful of people's time. But through that, I do think that I've built a community that's as powerful and influential on my life as would have been somebody in my family who is helping me out. So it's possible to do it the non-traditional way.
Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing your great advice. I'm pretty sure the audience of today's episode really appreciated it.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for having me.
And for those who are watching, please don't hesitate to leave your comments below and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next time.